Hello, everyone. It's so lovely to have you here. I can already see you in the chat right now. Popping in where you're watching from. We've got people in Nova Scotia in Canada. We've got folks in Paris, Chelmsford, Cheltenham, Cambridge. It's beautiful here in Cambridge today, I got to say. So today, our guest is the incredible, the amazing, the fantastic Kirsty Hulse. Honestly, I love her to bits. Founder of Raw Training and also organizer of Confidence Live. I rate Kirsty so highly, not just because of her obvious achievements, but because of her thoughtfulness. She's a vulnerable person and she lives her life in a way which genuinely seems to match everything she speaks about. She exemplifies the thing that she is trying to build in other people, confidence. Today, we're speaking about the confidence to pick yourself up from times where you may have been knocked down. And it's no secret, really, that the reason why I asked Kirsty to speak on this today is because, like, I think it's kind of the talk that I need. But I kind of hope that, like, by me sort of finding this session useful today, that like other folks do too. So today's featured sponsor is Impression. On March the 23rd, Impression, who are a digital marketing agency based in Nottingham, who are truly lovely people, are holding a free event in London focused on opportunities for organically growing your business in times of uncertainty. Sign up is free and it's found on the Marketing Meetup website as well as the Impression website right now. So if you'd like to head to that event, by all means, go there. It's free. It's amazing. Impression are lovely. They know the lemons. Get on down on March the 23rd. I also want to thank Storyblock, Hrefs, Redgate Software, Cambridge Marketing College, and Brand Recruitment. We'll speak more about those in future weeks. Every one of them is incredible. And today we've got a couple of tickets for Confidence Live to be given away if you share today's event. So if you share a takeaway and you tag in the Marketing Meetup and Kirsty on LinkedIn, we're going to give away a couple of tickets to Confidence Live. So you need to do that by Friday. But if you share a takeaway, tag in the Marketing Meetup and Kirsty as well, then we'll select someone at random by the end of the week to get a couple of free tickets to Confidence Live. I'm going to get out of the way because I've been bigging her up for the past few minutes and hand over to Kirsty. Over to you.
Thank you, Joe. That's such a nice, wonderful introduction. I really appreciate that. And hi, everyone chatting in the chat. It's really, really nice to see. So I am going to talk to you today a little bit around confidence, but more so resilience. I don't know about you, but I entered this year like a little bit nervous, a little bit scared about what was going to happen. So we're going to talk for the next 40 minutes or so about how we can work with that. But I have an idea that I often think that in order to let go of something, in order to kind of release something, we kind of first have to hold it a little bit. So can you all please give me a yes in the chat if any of you have ever experienced stress, burnout, overwhelm, if any of you have ever just been so exhausted and so drained? Thank you. Can you give me a yes in the chat if any of you have ever experienced financial strain, been made redundant, started a business, lost a job, tried to start something new without any guarantees? Thank you. And now, thank you, everyone. And give me a yes in the chat if any of you have ever experienced just that, you know, when the bottom falls out of your life, heartbreak, grief, loss, abandonment, pain. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to start by, thank you, I've got all those lovely yeses. I'm going to start by sharing a bit of context on my background and my story, as hopefully a way for us to kind of connect and also a way for me to kind of teach and share from that place. And I really think as marketers, we will know that the more specific to an individual a story is, the more universal it becomes. So hopefully there's something in my experiences that you can attach to. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about techniques and frameworks. So I'm going to share my screen for now. So if any of you have ever been on my webinars before, you will know that I have a difficult relationship with slides, because the moment I share my slides, I can no longer see the chat, and I love to see you. So I'm going to go back and forward between sharing slides today. So there might be moments where it feels a bit awkward and a bit clunky, but that's okay, because I'm more interested in impact than perfection. So here's what I hope to help you with today. I would love, love, love if we left the webinar today feeling more optimistic and hopeful about the future. I would love to help you feel excited and grateful to be you, to be yourself, to be living your life with your experiences right in this moment. I want to give you a sense of, I've got it. I've got it. It's going to be okay. And I really want this to feel practical, because having taught confidence now for years, I've probably taught around 30,000 people how to be more confident. Confidence is a habit. It is a habit and a skill. And with tiny little changes and tweaks, we really can start to nurture the skill and the habit of confidence. So I'd love today to feel really, really practical as well. Okay, so let me give you a bit of context as to my background and how we got here today. So 2000, my background is in marketing. I founded my own marketing agency in 2015, and that grew pretty quickly. Our first ever client was Virgin Atlantic. We had brands like IBM, Avis, all these kind of big clients. At our biggest, there was like, I think 70, 80 on the team. And around this time, I don't think I've ever felt more alone or stressed in my whole life. I had this really, really, really big business. I was speaking on big stages all over the world as a speaker. And I was in my late 20s, and I started at that time in my life getting really, really severe chest pains. And there was this one day when I was sitting in the audience of a conference, having just spoken, and my vision went really, really blurry. I started getting really sweaty, and I was having these really, really intense palpitations. Now, heart disease runs in my family. You don't need my medical history, but heart disease runs in my family. So I was like, oh, good. I'm in my late 20s and the old tick is gone. So the next day, I took myself to the hospital. Now, when a young woman goes to hospital and says, I'm having severe chest pains, they take it incredibly seriously. So they strapped me up to all of these different machines. They did loads of different tests. And then the doctor sat me down and said, your heart is fine, but are you stressed? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And the doctor was like, you are. This is anxiety. That was a panic attack. This is stress. And I left that doctor's office genuinely thinking, what would he know? What would he know, that medical professional, about my inner world? But what had happened to me is I was so used to working so hard, to doing so much, to going so fast, that I had recalibrated to that really deep sense of stress. So again, can you just give me a yes in the chat if you're the person that people rely on? If you're the person that does things that people go to, that you're the one either that's running the business or taking care of the family, when we are these people, which I also believe, thank you, when we are these people, which I believe is most of us, we share this experience, especially when we're nice, kind, compassionate people, which everyone here is. We internalize this sense of, I've got to keep giving and giving and giving. And there's an expression that really resonated with me that I heard around that time, and it was, take time for your wellness or you'll be forced to take it for your illness. So at the end of 2019, I made a decision to close my marketing agency. Everybody told me that was a ridiculous decision. Everyone said you could sell it, you've spent years building it, but I just knew it wasn't right for me. And people always say to me, Kirsty, it's so, so, so brave to start a business. And my response is always, it's much braver to close one. It's much braver to close a successful, profitable business, to take care of your own emotional, mental health. So 2019 was a really difficult year for me. I kind of lost that sense of identity that you can get from work. I really struggled financially because there was lots of big bills to pay, lots of tax to pay. You know, the overheads of my business were huge, and I just decided to cut it. So we managed to get through 2019, but it was rough. It was really, really difficult. And at the end of every year, what I do is I tend to, on LinkedIn, write like a reflective end of year post. So 2019 was rough. It was really hard. I was really sick. I closed my business. I lost my sense of identity. I was having panic attacks. I got really unwell. At the end of 2019, she wrote, I've teed up 2020 to be partnering with global brands, launching my second book, and a solid stream of retained clients. It's still very early days in terms of business, and I'm absolutely still, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, so I won't, but all signs point to an incredibly positive next year. I wrote that at the beginning of 2020. Like, it is fair to say that all signs did not point to an incredibly positive year. It was maybe the exact opposite. So, February 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, as things were all kind of looming, my business was training. I was standing on stages. so I am allowed to swear. Okay, good to know. Just wanted to check. So I was like doing in-person training and stuff like that. And within the course of, I'm not exaggerating, about 2 weeks in 2020, my entire life completely unraveled. I'm one of those people where the pandemic, like so many of us, really did knock me sideways. So overnight, I lost all of my business, all of my revenue, all of my income. At the beginning of the pandemic, I had hundreds of pounds in a savings account because I'd spent them all closing my agency. I was, at that time, I was kind of renting and I didn't know where to live. I'd lost all of my income, all of my revenue, everything had got cancelled. I couldn't furlough myself. So it was really difficult. So I decided that I needed to move out because I didn't know how long I was going to be. I was also at the time in a marriage. I think this happened to a lot of marriages where we were like, do we want to be locked down together? And suddenly you start kind of questioning everything. So I'm not exaggerating when I say I lost my home, my husband, my job within about 2 weeks. And I was on my knees at 30-ish something years old, after having been incredibly successful running this big business. I moved back in with my parents. Over this time, I got invited, I wrote a book on remote working. So over this time, I got invited to do lots of like presentations and talks and things. And I got invited to speak on This Morning to talk about the benefit of remote working. And I remember being in my mum and dad's house, about to be interviewed on live prime TV in my teenage bedroom. Like, it's just not the vibe. Like, it's just not the vibe that you want. And I was pacing up and down the stairs. Now, do any of you ever feel that sense of nerves of anxiety where it's this wave that completely takes over your whole body? I was experiencing that. And I was starting to get more and more worried and more panicked as I was going. And I could feel my kind of chest tighten. One of the symptoms of me when I'm really, really scared or really nervous is I get a rash here. Does anyone else have that, by the way? The old nerve rash. Get this like big rash here, and I could feel it kind of like coming all up my face. By the way, the video still exists on YouTube. If you Google Kirsty Hulse This Morning, watch it just to see the rash, just to see like the big nerve rash. So I was kind of like walking up and down, and I was so scared. And this tiny little voice in my head said, "Well, yeah, of course you're scared. Of course you're scared, Kirsty. The bottom of your life has completely fallen out. You've got nothing really. You're having to start all over again, and you're about to be interviewed on TV. It would be weird if you weren't freaking out about that." So in those moments, I said these two little words, "Well, yeah." I said in my head, I was like, "Well, yeah, of course I'm nervous. Well, yeah." And that is often enough, for me at least, to kind of soften the edges of the nerves. So after that point, at the end of 2020, I moved back to London. I rebuilt my business, and I rebuilt my business well, actually, if I do say so myself. And now I'm at a stage where I'm able to kind of organize big conferences in my hometown to give back to my communities. And it's been a really, really, really rough year, but I'm proud to say that actually now I'm like fully back. And one thing that I often say, if you've ever seen me talk before, I will often say, I will talk about my anxiety. I will say I experience anxiety. Anxiety is something that I experience. And I was on a big stage about 3 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer. And I was about to say something that I've said so many times. I was about to tell the story about my anxiety, about my panic attacks, about the things that I experience. I like sharing about how anxious I can get, because I think some people might look at someone like me and assume that I don't. I think some people might look at someone who presents confidently in this kind of way and assume that I'm not behind the door before with shaking hands, getting a little bit scared, hoping that I don't let you down. And I was about to tell that story about my anxiety, and halfway through, I realized I don't experience anxiety anymore. I used to, intensely. And it was in that moment, it kind of crept up on me that actually all of the work that I've been doing over the past few years has kind of like influenced me to a place where I get really nervous and I get really scared, but I'm not as catatonic with fear and pain as I used to be. So that's my background. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that context there so that we have an awareness. And from this place, I'm going to talk a little bit about how can we keep going, because I don't know about you, but I've had times in my life when I've hit my version, my short life privileged version of rock bottom, and maybe you have too. So how can we, for when we have those difficult moments, when the bottom falls out of our life, I don't know you, but I do know that you've experienced rejection, heartbreak, fear. I know that you found yourself in financial stress. I know that you've had difficult times where you don't really know what it is that you want to do. I know that maybe you've been made redundant. I don't know what it is, but I do know that you've certainly had times in your life when you've had to try and bring yourself back. And I also know that we might be entering this year feeling a little bit like, oh my God, I have things, what is a recession? What's happening with the world? Let's not read the news. What even is that? And so maybe some of you might be approaching this and sitting there today feeling a bit stressed, a bit burnt out, a bit overwhelmed, maybe lacking in confidence, maybe questioning if you're capable or worthy of doing it. So from that place, I want to think about how we can keep going. So there's a few things I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to try and make this really practical. I'm going to talk about something called the negativity bias, which is just wild. Then I'm going to teach us a little bit about motivation so that we can learn to motivate ourselves from a place of hope rather than fear. I'm going to talk a little bit about how language can impact our stress levels. I'm going to talk about how we can practically build confidence through action. And I'm going to help us remember the times in your life when you have felt fully, totally supported. So what I'm going to do is at this point now, I'm going to bin off slides because the chat's so lovely, but I'll send them to you afterwards so you have those resources. Okay, so the negativity bias. Some of you may have heard this, I believe. Maybe I've spoken to you about this before, but I really like to talk about it because I think it's so, so, so important. Give me a yes in the chat if anyone has heard of the negativity bias. You know what it is? Oh, honestly, humans. The negativity bias is, for those of you that don't know, as humans, we are genetically predisposed to focus on the negative. We are genetically predisposed to focus on the negative. We built to survive. We didn't evolve to move through the world being like, yes, queen. We evolved to move through the world going, will I die? Will I die? Will I die? And the way that we do that is we attach to the difficult things. We attach to the hard moments. We attach to the bad situations, and we forget, reject, and ignore the good stuff. And this is just the way of the world. We default to the negative as a mechanism in order to try and stay safe. If you think back to the early stages of human evolution and you see a tiger, it's in your interests to focus on that tiger. It's in your interests to go, I think I saw a tiger here once in 1994. I wonder if there's still a tiger here. It's in your interest to move through the world going, are there any tigers? Are there any tigers? And so again, I don't know you, but what I do know is you could do 1,000 things right. In fact, you probably are. I imagine you're doing a really good job at work. You're delivering things, you're hitting your deadlines, you're being a good friend, you're being a good partner, you're trying to manage the kids, you're trying to stay on top of your WhatsApp groups. There's just so many. You're trying to go to the gym and eat well, and you're doing all of this stuff and you're doing it well, and you fuck one thing up. You drop the ball on one thing. You let one person down, you miss one deadline, and that is where our focus goes. This is what we judge ourselves on. I teach this stuff all the time, and I do thousands and thousands of sessions. If I ever do one where I think it wasn't that great, I'm like, I clearly can't do this, because we attach to the negative, we forget the positive. And this doesn't mean we're pessimistic. Can anyone give me a yes in the chat if you're an overthinker? Any overthinkers here? Who overthinks? Okay. Thank you. I don't know how many people are on this, but I would say, hell yes. Oh my God, yes, 1000%. I ask probably about 400 people that question a week. Most of us say yes. It's just thinking, team. You don't overthink. You don't. You just think. You evolved to try and figure out strategies to try and keep yourself safe. You evolved to try and like work things out to plan. So can we please stop judging ourselves for our fundamental humanity? You don't overthink, you just think, you plan, you try and work things out. This is what the negativity bias does. You are not flawed. You're not someone who overthinks and is negative. It's just what we do. So that's really important to know, because when we understand that we default to the negative, then what we can start doing or try to do is take a bit of time to consciously attach to the positive. So I said I was going to try and make today practical. So I know quite a lot about habits. I've learned lots about habits over the years. If anyone wants to form a new habit, let me give you a tip. Habits are sticky. So what I mean by that is if you have a pre-existing habit, then what you can do is you can stick a habit to that pre-existing habit. So put something in the chat for me. What's one thing you do religiously at the end of every day? At the end of every day, what's the thing that you do every day? Some of you could go for brushing your teeth. Yoga, love that for you, Dan. Take my makeup off, Amy. I wish I was as good as you. A glass of wine, love that for you, Anna. Sleep, or if you have dogs, you might walk a dog. You might sort the kids out, whatever, take the dog out, thank you. So those things that you do every day, they're habits. I'm going to give you something to practice for me, and all I want you to do is I just want you to practice this tomorrow. Tomorrow when you go to bed, brush your teeth, sort the kids out, take the dog out, whatever it is, can you just spend 1 minute thinking about the things you've done well that day? Just think about it. We've all bought a gratitude journal that lasted 10 days. Like, we don't have to sit and write a mini novella. But if you take some time every day to just make a mental acknowledgement of the stuff you are doing well, I promise you, I've trained tens of sorry, Nicole, I'm right there with you. We've all got gratitude journals gathering dust. I see us. But what's equally as powerful and easier is to just think about it. We don't have to sit down and write stuff out. If you just go at the end of the day, what did I do well today? And you know what? That is radical. It's tiny and it's practical, but it's radical. So if you take one thing away from this presentation today, please let it be that tomorrow at the end of the day, you take a moment to go, what did I do well today? Because perhaps more likely you might go, well, I haven't done this and I've still got that to do, and I messed up that call, and I was like really weird. And on that Zoom in the third meeting of the day, I looked like an egg, like whatever it is. So that's all we need to do. Okay, so that's the first thing. Thank you. Do it tonight, Nicola. Yes, why wait until tomorrow? Thank you. I also realize I do this automatically now. Again, my natural predisposition will be to beat myself up, give myself a hard time. But now, because I've been training myself to do this, there's something else alongside it. A quick note on this. My nan, Vera, had an expression, which is the onions are in the soup. The onions are in the soup. And what I mean by that is if you're worried, if you're stressed, if you're scared, if you're anxious, those onions are in the soup. Maybe we could let them be. Maybe we don't have to invest our time and energy trying to get the onions out of the soup. To overextend the metaphor, maybe we could put some extra stuff in the soup. Maybe we could put in some like carrots. Maybe we could put in some like self-love croutons. Never said that before. Don't know if I'm ever going to say it again. And so what we can do is we don't have to invest our energy. Stop being negative. Stop caring what people think. Stop this. It's really hard. Maybe what we can do instead is allow ourselves to be negative, allow ourselves to be miserable, allow ourselves to have a bad bloody day, and at the same time go, what else is true? This stuff was really hard today. What else was good today? I'm feeling really scared today. What else am I feeling? And maybe we can dilute it. And I feel like that's almost like a cheat code, a cheat code to confidence. The onions are in the soup, so what we can do is we can just add more in. So on the next thing, I want to do a little brief note on human motivation. I'm going to share my slides again at this point because I think they serve us. Similar to this, so human motivation, how do we motivate ourselves? What is it that for us as humans spurs us into action? And this can be nice to know for marketers too, because obviously we're working with trying to get people to change behavior. So human motivation, any single time we're spurred to take an action, one of these things is at play. We have what's known as away state motivation, and we have what's known as toward state motivation. And this is essentially the neurological kind of like factors that are at play when we decide to change. So away state motivation is kind of what it says in the tin. So away state motivation is when, I'm doing like little puppets. Away state motivation is when we go, here's a bad thing that I don't want. Bad thing, don't want it, gonna move away from it. And so for you, that away state motivation might feel or sound a little bit like, I don't want to let people down, so I'm gonna really try on this. Or it might be like, I don't want people to think I'm lazy. I don't want to mess up. I don't want to miss this deadline. I don't want to not hit these targets. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want everybody to think I'm an idiot. I don't want that client on that call to not think I'm an expert. So we have all of this motivation that's rooted in what we don't want. I don't want this, so I'm going to move into action. I also believe we get taught this. I don't know if any of you have kids, or I don't know what your schooling was like, but I remember my mum always used to say this thing to me. She was always like, Kirsty, this is Val, I'll do a voice for you. You've all met Val now, right? This is what she sounds like. She's like, Kirsty, right, what you've got to do, you've got to work dead hard in school, because if you don't work hard in school, you'll fail your exams and then you'll be a bin man. Now, I would like to say there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a bin person. I think that would be a wonderful career choice, but she used to try and say it to me to try and get me to work. Now, everything we do is rooted in the sense of if we don't do this, a bad thing will happen. To any of you, give me a yes in the chat if you're having a really busy day. There's so much going on, your to-do list is piling, you've got back-to-back meetings, you're exhausted, you're drained, you're really stressed. In those moments, would you feel as though, would you feel too guilty to take a break? There's so much going on, you've got so much to do. Yes, thank you, friends. That's a waste state motivation. Because when we're motivating ourselves by a waste state, we couldn't possibly take a break. So if we take a break, it's all going to fall apart. Researchers show that if we stick and we stay in this away state motivation consistently, it can induce something called primal panic. I don't need to tell you what that means. You know what primal panic is. It's that kind of sense of go, 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 go. I've got to keep going. I've got to keep working. Now, away state motivation is good. We don't want to get rid of it. I'm sure that some of you absolutely crush it close to a deadline. I'm sure that some of us can't possibly get anything done unless we do have that looming sense of pressure. So we do like away state motivation. It is helpful. But if we only ever use away state motivation, there are some pitfalls. If anybody wants to guess what the pitfalls of away state motivation are in the chat, then I will invite you to do that. Yes, Gemma, thank you. Yes, Olivia, thank you. Wonderful, thank you. Away state motivation is essentially motivating ourselves through fear. When we motivate ourselves through fear, it can cause burnout, stress, exhaustion. It's easier to feel like a failure. Thank you, Natalie. Yes, like Emma says, we're not acknowledging the good we do, all of this stuff. Because we essentially root ourselves in the negative to spur us into action. That's okay, love that for us, thank you. But if we consistently do it, it's draining, it's exhausting. And do any of you here, give me a yes in the chat, feel as if your motivation, your confidence, your energy, your enthusiasm, your zest for life is spiky? So like, some days I'm gonna get it, I'm gonna nail it, and the next day you're like, can't. And then like, I've got it, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna be amazing. And then the next day you can't, and then you're like, and then don't, and then don't. I used to live my life in this constant state of being like jacked up, followed by a crash. Jacked up crash, jacked up crash, jacked up crash. I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's 100% exactly the way that I used to work. And so I've learned to use toward state more. So away state is good. We don't need to get rid of it, but it can be exhausting. It can make our motivation really spiky. Also, it's not present if we're not feeling stress or pressure. So depending on how much we rely on away state motivation, some of us perhaps might even seek out busyness. Some of us might even seek out stress because it's the only way we've learned to ever bloody get stuff done. So if you are one of those people, you have my hand of compassion. I see you. I'm right there with you. So that's away state motivation. Thank you, away state motivation. We love you. Those onions are in the soup, but let's add in some more self-love croutons. So then we have something called toward state motivation. Toward state motivation is its friendlier cousin. I try pretty much to exclusively motivate myself through toward state now. And toward state is not when we motivate ourselves from a fear of f***ing up. It's when we motivate ourselves through a hope of doing good work. Same, but it's semantic and it feels different. Research has shown when we use toward state language, when we use toward state motivation, it engages our motivational processes. It can lower our cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and it kind of expands us out. We become more open and more creative. And the good thing about this is it can be really, really practical. I teach confidence. So if I said to you all now, how would you behave if you were feeling more confident? In fact, you can answer that question for me in the chat if you like. Let's do an experiment. If you felt more confident, what would you do differently? Often when I ask that question, if you felt more confident, what would you do differently? People will tend to say things like, I'd stop being nervous. I'd stop self-sabotaging. I'd stop not sharing in meetings. I'd be less afraid. These kinds of things. So these are lovely. Thank you. So often we think about what we don't want to be. I don't want to be scared. I don't want to mess things up. This again is okay, but this is a waste state motivation. What we can do is we can root it in what we do want. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of this to make it really real. And then what I'm going to do is she loves a worksheet. I've got a worksheet in how to turn your main goals into real inspiring towards state goals. I'll invite all of you to do it because it can be really helpful to motivate us in a way that is expansive and not really scary. So before the session today, Joe and I were talking, and I'm organising this conference at the moment, and it's honestly, I've stressed myself out here. It's massive. It's in my hometown in Stoke. I'm trying to get loads of people to travel to Stoke for a thing, and it's on the 30th of March. And I was saying to Joe, the way that I've been thinking about this is on the 30th of March, I want to feel so proud of myself. I want 30th of March me to go, I couldn't have done any more. I want 30th of March me to look back and thank me now for putting all of the effort in. That's towards state motivation. It's more emotional. I'm like getting a bit emotional thinking about it. It's more emotional, it's more heartfelt. So it's not, oh my God, I've got to organize this conference, otherwise this bad thing's going to happen, this bad thing's going to happen. There's a version of me in the future that feels so proud of me. That's towards state motivation. So towards state motivation might be wanting to think a bit less about what you want to stop and think more about what you want to start. I'm going to use this example because it's visceral, and I think a lot of us have experience of this. I reject the culture it comes from, but have any of you ever struggled to maintain any kind of fitness regime? Any of you ever struggled to be consistent with the old fitness? Any of you ever been a little bit inconsistent with the gym? So I literally my entire adult life never managed to figure it out. Never got it down, never managed. And the thing is, I grew up as a dancer. My Auntie Marilyn ran a dance school. I grew up dancing. I know what it feels like to be in your body and to be flexible. And I like that feeling. But then I entered my adulthood and I never managed to work out how to do it, ever, ever, ever. And the reason I believe was because I was doing it from a waste state motivation. A waste state motivation would be thinking like, oh, I want to stop feeling so like tight. I want to stop feeling so sluggish. I want to stop looking the way I do. I want to stop this. I want to stop that. That's a waste state motivation. If we're trying to motivate ourselves to go to the gym or whatever it is, or play a sport or do yoga or dance or move your body, who cares? If we're trying to motivate to do stuff like that and we do it from a place of, I don't want this. I don't want the way I look now. I don't want to feel the way I feel now. I don't want that. That is demotivating. It's riddled with self-judgment, and it's really hard to stick at stuff like that. About 2 years ago, I was like, I'm going to try and towards state motivate myself to health. And so I decided, instead of going, I don't want to feel tight, I don't want this, I don't want that, I went, I would like to feel more space in my body. I would like to feel when I sat down that I wasn't all like crunched up. I would like to feel as though when I danced in parties, I could dance for a while and it wouldn't be really difficult. I want to be able to feel more expansive. That's towards state motivation. Which is more motivating? I don't want to look this way. I don't want this versus I want to feel some space. I want to feel some roominess in my body. I want to feel proud of myself. I want to feel energized and vital. So I started rooting it in this kind of way. Now, I don't mean to be smug, everyone, but your girl's been going to yoga every day for 2 years because of towards state motivation. Because it starts as a thing and then it becomes a habit. And so a towards state motivation is truly really helpful, I think, and it can feel abstract, but it can be rooted in language. So hopefully this makes sense, but just to make this really, really clear, let's stop thinking about what we need to stop. Let's be a little kinder to ourselves and just think about what we want to add in. What do we want to start? And I've used workout as an example because I think it's a helpful one, but I'm talking about confidence, happiness, productivity, any area in your life where you want to kind of take a bit more space and grow into something new. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more things, then I'm going to create some space for questions. How are we all doing? We okay? We good? Energy okay? Wonderful. Okay, lovely. Right, so a couple more things. Note on language. So, Joe, can I talk to you for 1 second? I'm going to use you as an example. Joe, I want you to imagine. Thank you. I want you to imagine that I'm your boss. Nobody wants it, nobody needs it. But let's imagine for a second that I am. And I ring you in the morning, Joe, and I'm like, we've got a really busy day today, Joe. So could you just open your calendar for me? Look at your calendar. It's very busy. There's quite a lot to do. So just go through all the things that you need to do. We are busy, but I reckon we'll be able to get it done if we just make sure we look at our calendar and we try and plan it, but it is busy. If I rang you in the morning and said that, how would that make you feel?
Exhausted. Just exhausted.
Exhausted, stressed, anxious. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. You can go back on mute now. And so if we start our day being like, it's very busy, I've got a lot to do, it'll bring about that sense of like exhaustion and stress. Now, everything I say here is never a statement of judgment, always a statement of connection. Who here starts their day going, I've got a busy day today? Busy day today. Let me just look at my calendar. I'm so busy. I've got so many things to do. I'm really busy. Your friends come over for dinner and they go, how are you? Oh, I'm so busy. Just so busy at the moment. We are bloody busy. Nobody's denying that. We've got stuff coming out of our arses. We've got so much to do. But I don't know about you. But for me, the word busy in my body is stress. When I tell myself I'm busy, my body responds accordingly. I brace. I brace. I try not to use the word busy anymore because I don't think it's helpful for me. It can be true, but it's not necessarily helpful. So I use something else. I use the word, are you ready for this? Lively. I go, oh, I've got a lively week. I've got quite a lively week. There's a coffee shop underneath where I live. And the woman who runs it is called Dolores. She's amazing. I love her. Imagine having a coffee shop downstairs. I'm never not in there. So I go downstairs and every day I'm like, Dolores, how's your day? And she often looks at me and she's like, I'm having a lively day. So I just want you to be mindful that the language we use to describe ourselves can have an impact. And we are busy. Life is stressful. But why not use lively instead? On that, every single day, one of the things I try to do is when I plan my day, when I'm writing my to-do lists, I'll ask myself, what am I excited about from today? What am I excited for today? A tiny little question. What are the things I'm excited for today? So that's one thing I do as well. Now, last but not least, and I'm going to give you something to leave and think about. I mentioned earlier that confidence is a habit. So can you give me a yes in the chat for those of you who have ever said about yourself, I'm not a confident person. I'm not a confident person. Okay. Lots of yeses. I'm not a confident person. And we'll often maybe say that or think that about ourselves because we think confidence is a personality trait. And so thank you for sharing that with me, Claire. Hopefully I can change that perception for you a little bit today. And so now I want you to give me a yes in the chat. If any of you have ever, even fleetingly, even for a moment, even for a tiny bit, felt the feeling of confidence. Have any of you ever, maybe it's when you're with your friends, maybe it's when you're with your kids, maybe it's when you're wearing that dress, maybe it's when your favorite song comes on, maybe it's when you're playing video games, maybe it was ages ago. All of us, I think, have felt the feeling of confidence. There is no such thing as not a confident person because confidence is not a personality trait, it's a feeling. It's a feeling. And what I'm really good at is helping people access that feeling in a wider range of scenarios. There are no rules in how confidence manifests itself. Confidence can be quiet, confidence can be big, confidence can be expressive, confidence can be funny, confidence can be calm. I ask people, for you, when you're feeling confident, what does that look like? Most people say calm. I'm not bringing an ounce of calm energy today. My confidence isn't calm. Mine tends to be a little bit more here. So we're allowed to be confident in any way that works for us, but it's also, thank you for answering. So maybe you could go away and think about, for you as a person, when do you feel confident? How does your confidence express itself? Is it silly? Is it playful? Know that. Create a mental blueprint for your confidence. You could be really quiet. You could be really still. You could be methodical. You could be calm. Those are all really welcome and valid expressions of confidence. Love that for you. And then the next question I want you to ask yourself, and I'll share some resources with this so you can do it, is what actions can help me bring about that feeling? What actions make me feel playful? What actions make me feel calm? What actions make me feel silly? What actions make me enjoy myself? What actions, whatever it is for you. And what I want is you to work out a suite of actions, tiny little actions. So for me, if I want to show up confidently, my actions are she puts on a lip and I listen to a song and I do a kitchen dance. And so I'm not thinking about trying to be confident anymore. I put my energy towards doing the actions, and maybe if I'm lucky, the feeling.
Oh no, we've got a frozen screen.
Back.
There we go.
Love that. Love that for me. Another expression of confidence is when you're mid-flow on a webinar and you're like, wow, my internet just broke. Love that. Love it when that happens. Joe, thank you for, I'm sure, what was your incredible filling that you got.
Wonderful. Yeah, I did a fabulous job.
It was pretty much at the end anyway. So we have some questions you mentioned.
Yes. Shall we take the Q&A now? Did you have anything extra there? Sorry, Kirsty.
No, why don't you apologize? It's a nice opportunity to showcase that things go wrong sometimes and people are nice and it's fine. The internet breaks times. I was simply just saying that make sure we have actions that bring about that feeling, so that we're not focusing on being confident. We're focusing on listening to that song that makes us feel confident. We're not focused on, we're not focused on being motivated. We're focused on taking a few deep breaths in the morning. And when we focus on actions, it's actually a lot easier to bring about the feeling. It's more practical.
I love it. Honestly, Kirsty, so fabulous. Thank you for bringing both the theory and the practicalities today. There's already been an abundance of love, both in the chat while you were gone, but also following it. It's really, really incredible. So thank you very much. We do have a little bit of time for questions and answers. So if that's good with you, we'll take.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Folks have been adding them in as we were going, and the one from Kelsey in particular is just lovely. Kelsey, by the way, is fabulous. It's a lovely question from a lovely person. So Kelsey says, how do you calm your mind when there's actually so much to do and you can't even think straight? How can you recenter yourself? And maybe to perhaps add a bit of flavor to this and personal experience. Recently, I found myself not even breathing. I'm like, I can't breathe, and that's weird. So without meaning to overtake Kelsey's question at all, I can totally resonate with this and would love your experience.
Thank you for a beautiful, beautiful question. I'm going to answer this question with as much honesty and compassion as I possibly can. And I'll share a bit of a bee. I have a little bee in my bonnet around, I'm just going to say safe space. I have a bee in my bonnet about the term mental health. I love that we're talking about it, that people are sharing. It's really important. And I love that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But if I said to you now, Joe, can you just show me where you feel your anxiety? We might go here, or we might go tummy. So I think when we think about mental health, we think that we have to calm our mind. We think that we can rationalize away our emotions. We think that we can think ourselves out of stress. So to answer Kelsey's question is to not think about calming our mind, but thinking about reassuring our bodies. Because for me, at least, panic, stress, anxiety, it's in my tummy. It's in my stomach. It's my heart rate increasing. It's my hands shaking. It's my vocal cords constricting. And so what I would recommend is focus your attention on your body and let the mind follow. So take whatever it is, and we're all really different. And so maybe, Kelsey, for you, just after this, jot down, answer this question. What things could I do to make my body feel safe? Because if we make our bodies feel a little safer, then sometimes, perhaps if we're lucky, we might be able to find that calm mental place a little easier to access. So it can be breathing, it can be moving, it can be shaking, it can be dancing, it can be punching a pillow. I don't know what it is for you. It's different for everyone. But I really think it's helpful when it comes to stress, burnout, overwhelm, to think about ourselves as an integrated emotional system and not think only about the bit between our ears.
Nice. That's incredible. And so for you, when you came to sort of realize that stuff about you feel it in your tummy, was that like something where you just sort of sat down and you're like, oh my God, that's where it is, that's it for me? I mean, was it sitting and realizing, or was it just really, really obvious, and you were just like, yeah, this is where it is all the time, and so on? What's that process look like for you?
Lovely question. For me, it was so the opposite of obvious. I was so disconnected. When I went, my heart was going and I couldn't even. So for me, it took a long time. And I think the things that helped me were things like breath work, meditation, yoga. Someone put somatics. Yeah. So I will often just sit and feel the sensations in my body. Just a load of crying, Joe. So much. But I grew up in a family where emotions were like bad. And so I really had to allow myself to feel some emotions. It was just the worst.
Yeah, I get it. I think you're definitely not alone in that. And it's I think particularly in quite a lot of British culture, we often have these sort of feelings of not expressing ourselves. I think that's changing. I do feel like maybe it's our little bubbles, and maybe we're just privileged, in this webinar as an example, to be surrounded by people who do seem to be in tune with those things and willing to accept it. But I think that's a journey.
You create that.
Well, we create it. We do it together. It's a good team effort. Let's take the next one from Sam, because likewise, this is lovely, and it relates to what you were speaking about how everyone says busy is like the default answer, and how that's like the thing, and you spoke about lively becoming your substitute for that. And so Sam says, how do you avoid lively just becoming a substitute for busy, and then in your head just causing the same stress response? I mean, do you ever go
really good.
Lively?
Not yet. I'm such a good question, Sam. I kind of thought at some point lively would become busy, but I've been doing it for about 3 years, and every time it makes me laugh. Because it's silly. It's just silly. I used to use rich, but rich started to become a bit like busy. And so I think, yeah, so it's a really good question. And maybe one day lively will become busy, and then I'll have to pick another word. But for now, lively is just, every time I say it, I do like what Joe did, and it just makes me laugh. And if the moment we can make ourselves laugh, I think we're on to a winner. Nice.
I love that. And there's that's what the thesauruses are for as well, right? So
yeah. And he's got a good action-packed day.
You start venturing into like LinkedIn language, don't you? And today is a passionate day. I'm very passionate about today, or whatever. So I love that. So thank you. That's really useful and opens up a world of opportunities for various synonyms to describe our days, which is perfect. I want to pick this up. I'm reading this at the same time as speaking about it, so hopefully I think it will be thoughtful, because it's from Bryony, who says, I often reply to the how are you question with enjoying the good bits of life better than fine, and I think that speaks to a nice bit of optimism about looking for the goodness is a lovely thing. Let's take the next one from Sophie. There's been some really thoughtful questions today, so thank you everyone for not only your chat but also the questions that have come through. It's really appreciated. The next one comes from Sophie, who says, how do you feel about the notion of manifesting things into your life? Do you have an opinion there?
So I think so the idea around manifestation is your thoughts can create your reality. So I think that can be nourishing, but it can also be very, very problematic. If you're someone with anxiety, and if we're internalizing an idea that our thoughts create our reality, that can be really, really terrifying. What I do think is that how we think about the world can influence how we show up in it. And I think when we think about manifestation, my honest answer is I have some issues with it, because it can maybe sometimes disregard our privilege a little bit. But I do think what is really, really important is that if we focus on the good things, the good people, if we lead from a place of impact and compassion and trying to be kind, then that can kind of come back. And I think that's really important. So I think it's about knowing what you want, charting a course for that, believing that you can do it, and then taking as much action as you possibly can to get there. But I say this with all of my heart. I reject the idea that your thoughts create your reality, because I think that can be very difficult for anxious people.
Thank you for sharing that. And with that thought, how much of acceptance of negativity do we need to be doing? Because it feels like some of the tools, and certainly not all that you've shared today, have been about sort of taking a thing and then, so rather than away, it's towards, as an example, is taking a negative and trying to do a positive. Are there times where you look at your confidence journey and go, actually, something's just a turd, and we kind of need to accept it and kind of, just deal with that for that moment,
Yeah, and I think it's so important, because for me, it's never or, it's always and. This is a turd, and there's some little bits of sweet corn in this turd. So
that's the snippet. That's the snippet for the webinar. That's like the 10 seconds,
Yeah. So for me, there's no, like, they're not. I even for me struggle with the idea of like positive and negative. It's just the stuff. It's just the stuff that's there. It's the stuff that's present. And sometimes we'll have moments in our life that are really difficult, and sometimes we'll have moments that are less difficult. And I think when we understand that we can feel, what's so empowering for me is, I don't know the people on this call, but I know that we're all a hot mess, and we can feel many different conflicting emotions at the exact same time. And so I can feel stressed and worried and hopeful and confident at the exact same time. I can feel calm, I can feel happy, all at the same time. So for me, it's never about one being better than the other, or kind of like them being opposites. It's more just being about what's here now. And knowing, okay, so here's the bad stuff, but is there any? And there might not be, but it's about taking a moment to seek for some positives alongside. Onions are in the soup, we just add more in.
Nice. I love that. That's so silly, but amazing.
I can feel miserable and feel the sun on my face. Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's really lovely. Thank you for sharing that. That's a beautiful phrase. I love that. Cool. Let's take the next one, because Mubarak's actually asked a series of really thoughtful questions that could go in lots of directions, particularly with 2 minutes left of the hour. So maybe if we just take number one, which is, what was your overriding takeaway from 2022? So big.
You know what? I'm actually really glad that this question was asked, because I wanted to cover it and I didn't quite have the time. So thank you. Is that I learned that I am fully supported. I'm supported. People have my back. And I think that's difficult to remember sometimes, that I have friends, I have a community, I've built people around me, and hopefully everybody here can feel into that sense a little bit. So I think the thing that I learned is I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to always be sparkling. I don't have to earn love. I don't have to earn friendship. There are people in my life who will have my back when I need it. And a question I constantly ask myself is, who's supporting me right now in this moment? Because in order to feel confident, we need to feel a sense of community. We're pack animals. I worry a little bit about self-love and the idea that you can retreat and put on a face mask and come back into the world renewed. I think that can work, but actually what we really need is to feel a sense of togetherness, to allow ourselves to ask for support. So the biggest takeaway for me for 2022 is that people will accept me and see me and take care of me even when I feel like I don't deserve it.
If you want to share a takeaway from today's session, tag in the Marketing Meetup and tagging Kirsty as well on LinkedIn by Friday. Then we've got a couple of tickets to go for Confidence Live next month.